All right, so we're doing another roster changes slash rumors thing. It's mostly changes this time. As you know, I was gone away for 4 days when these changes and announcements were made because my internet access was cut off. For whatever reason, the cables in my area were cut from my internet service provider, so I didn't have Wi-Fi for that period. But now, finally here, we're just gonna get into it fast, right? We're gonna go fast because there's a lot of changes. I want to talk about them. Most of them are tier one slash tier 1.5. And some of them are more tier two, lesser known teams that maybe um, some of the casuals won't know. Sorry, but that's true. So the first one and the big one, we're not going in order, by the way, from time of event. First one is Gizmy takes over as 100 Thieves IGL, and they bench a Gil. So first and foremost, I think this is a good pickup. I think picking up Gizmy is actually a very good idea for 100 Thieves because he is a well-proven caller. However, they are kind of um, scapegoating a Gil. I think a Gil did fall off. He had like a 1.15 at the start of the org, and he was very good, but it looks like they want to keep on the veteran and Rain. The reason why a Gil is being benched is because Rain basically failed as an IGL, um, which I don't think is a Gil spot. I still think a Gil could go to a tier 1.5 top of tier 2 team, and he would perform well there because he takes a lot of the bad roles, takes a lot of the positions people do not like. I do think he's a bit baity, but I think he's a decent player, right? I think he's completely serviceable for an anchor slash lurker, completely serviceable. Should go to a better team. We'll see how the roles work in 100 Thieves now. Gives me wants some active positions like game helper on Dust 2, but is also willing to take bad roles like apps on Mirage, right? So pick up if you're going to pick up a young IGL. In my opinion, he should have went to even better teams than 100 Thieves. So yeah. We will talk about the Luminosity thing after. Aurora bid farewell to Faber. Major steps down, and they bench Soulfly. So these are in the lieu of roster changes or roster rumors about Aurora being international. It's heavily speculated that they're going to get Kixin. Apparently, they've been in talks with Kixin for a while. I think Kixin is an upgrade as an IGL. Benching Soulfly is a bit weird because a lot of people heard about the Molodoi rumor, but it looks like the Molodoi thing is not happening, right? So as a result, they're keeping Woxic and they're benching Soulfly. Now, just to preface this, I do think Soulfly was one of the best pickups of this offseason, right? Of the 2025 offseason coming into 2026, I think Soulfly was one of the best pickups, right? I was even doubtful of the squad because I thought Aurora was going to have the same problems because Soulfly, if you watch him on Firefox, was an aggressive, hard opener star player, and he was amazing at the job, right? On Firefox, Banjo and Soulfly were carrying that team. But I didn't think it was going to work, but he managed to transition into a very good role player, right? In my opinion, he was a completely serviceable tier one role player, considering it was his first time at tier one. You saw how he had a much more stable floor than Joda, right? Joda, when he was anchoring, had super high highs. He also had super low lows. But I think Soulfly brought up more consistent floor, and this year you saw that when they allowed Soulfly and Wicadia to lurk, right? Major let them lurk because I do think Joda struggled when it came to lurking on T sides, right? Because I think he was, as I think Major might have said, like he thought Joda was like not as smart as the other two. Um, but in my opinion, I don't think I would have made the change to international roster if you were not able to get like a top five upper like Molodoi, right? If you couldn't get Molodoi, I wouldn't make this change because in my opinion, I saw good things at this major, and I think they should have had one more run at it, right? And then you go international, especially if you're not able to get Molodoi. I would wait for Molodoi's time and Furia to be up and then get kicks in and get. I understand the timing is too perfect, but I don't know who they're gonna bring in as an anchor. Maybe it's Jimfat. I think Jimfat is objectively an upgrade over Soulfly for anchor position slash support positions, but I'm gonna be a bit sad about Aurora no longer being Turkish, and I'm kind of sad Major's time as an IGL as he was slowly improving throughout the season is kind of cut short, but it is what it is. The next big one is BC Game signed Magisk as in-game leader. If you don't know, Magisk has been a free agent from Falcons for almost half a year, maybe a full year at this point. Magisk has done IGL or has been in IGL for a period in Astralis 2020, I think, during the online era, right, where Glaive had to step out for a period. So he's done it in the past. I think it's a natural progression of his career. I think Magisk as an IGL will be fine. He's done it in the past, and I've heard he's a guy with a lot of ideas, a big voice right within a team. He has an idea of how to play the game. So I think Magisk being an IGL is fine. I think this is a natural progression for his career, and I do think this is about as good as what BC Game could do. You might be able to get some actual proven IGLs, but the problem with it is I don't know if Simple and Electronic are actually going to listen to anybody else other than people they respect. And they probably do respect Magisk because, again, he was on Astralis. He was on that era-winning Astralis roster. So I do think this is a decent pickup. I think Simple and Electronic might listen. They signed Sensu. I think Magisk is a decent risk, decent gamble. Um, I'm curious who they bring in as their anchor. Maybe it's Jimfat. I doubt it, though. Why would Jimfat go there? Sources: Astralis to unveil Neo as head coach. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one since they benched Ruga, or Ruga has parted ways with the team. I think Ruga was the weakest part of Astralis. It seemed like he didn't really have any. I just don't know what he did, is the problem, right? And it's not that Ruga is like useless or doesn't have impact. He probably does. But it seems like Hooksy is basically having to. He's not only having to do the tactics, but he's also has to be a leader for the team. And I don't think he can handle both of that at the same time because I think Hooksy's weakest attribute as an IGL has always been leadership. I think he's never had it. He comes off as a bit bitchy and whiny. It seems like he complains a little too much, right? He's a bit of a tilter. So I think having somebody who is experienced as Neo, who the players will look up and respect because of his legacy, his tenureship, right? Within the game, right? He's an icon of the game, right? I think it's a decent idea. It's a bit of a risk. I don't know if it's going to help out when it comes to the leadership aspect because I think Neo in phase wasn't a big leadership guy. But if he can just help with the vibes a bit, get the team more like focused and like more on track and they're tilting less, maybe it's a good thing. But we'll see. I think Neo also adds good things when it comes to tactics. I've heard when phase in 2024 for that period, right? Neo was apparently doing a lot, coming up with a lot of ideas and um, a lot of ways in terms of how to play the game, right, with utility and stuff like that. So that's good. Fnatic signed Karen. This was kind of expected. Everybody who saw Karen get benched in NIP kind of figured he would end up on Fnatic eventually, because Fnatic are basically fully Ukrainian at this point. I mean, they literally are fully Ukrainian if you scroll down. I still think Fear is a fraud. Sorry, I'm going to say it. That Shanghai run sold me on a complete lie. He was never that ever again. Jambo's good. Chikazmo I like. He's young and he's talented. Bratko, no opinion. But I don't know. It's an interesting spot for Karen to develop. In my opinion, I'd just go back to Inner Circle, but Inner Circle kind of just won a tournament, so I don't think he's getting back there. So we went to the other Ukrainian project, and I think this is an okay spot for Karen to end up. Needs some time to develop, obviously. I think in Inner Circle slash TNL, when I watched him there, I was so hyped up. I was so hyped for this player when he got picked up by NIP. Sadly, just didn't live up to the expectations I had for him. So him going down another level and spending more time developing, I think is fine, right? I think he has unbelievably good raw aim. He has some insane aim, but we'll see. I think there's a good pickup for Fnatic though. Story out of FlyQuest's active lineup, and Nip and Udrix part ways. The reason I'm mentioning this is because there's a bit of a rumor going on that they might be reassembling the Saw core, right? The Saw core that made the Cologne semifinals, I believe, in 2024, where they beat FaZe, right? I think it's a kind of makes sense. Story was never as good as Regali was, and Udrix, I think, was decent soldier for the squad, but I don't think he was as good of a player as Karen. I think Karen is a better player than Udrix, but I think Udrix fit the system more for what Snappy needed, which is why we saw Udrix do better than Karen, and a lot of people were like, well, why did they sign Karen? It's because Karen just didn't fit with the system. Um, but I do think these make sense. I do think Story and Udrix are probably going to go to that Saw reunion, right? That's probably planned to happen. So good for them. Who should FlyQuest get? I don't know. It's a bit hard. I don't think they can sign Regali because he's on. I mean, they're not going back to Regali. It's not happening. I don't know who they would get. Do they have enough money for Klim? Why would Klim go there? I don't know. It's a bit weird. Klim also apparently has like a bit of a Regali reputation where he's a bit of an asshole. That's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but we'll see. EF part ways with Demka and Riggin. Kind of sad. I like this EF project, and sadly, they haven't really lived up to expectations. I really liked a lot of the pieces they picked up when they picked up Jada, when they picked up Regali, missed them. Um, when they had Waro for a period, right? I was a fan of that roster as well. Um, when they picked up Brigham and Demka. Brigham and Demka are being benched. It's probably because of performance-related issues. They haven't been performing as well. I think Demka is fine considering he does a lot of the hard support work roles, which he's always kind of done. He's always been, in my opinion, Demka is a very serviceable like anchor like lurker within like tier two. He's very serviceable at that job. Riggin, I think, is for your aggressive hard entry player who gets to play some active positions, active rotator spots. I think he's completely serviceable. I do think he has a certain ceiling that he does hit rather fast, though, once you get to actually decent opposition. But it also could be just personality clashes, right? Demka, not known to be as super easy to work with, and Riggin is he's a bit of a tilter, right? I don't think he's a mean guy, but I think he just tilts, and I think that could be like hurting the thing, the vibes, right? And on top of that, Regali is not known for being necessarily super easy to work with either. So hopefully they go to hopefully they go to decent rosters or decent projects because I think they're, for tier two they're good, right? I think they're fairly solid for what they offer, right? Riggin as your aggressive entry, like crazy guy that just goes first, and Demka as your anchor lurker. They're completely serviceable for tier two. Kavem announces free agency, and SDY hits free agency. I'm mentioning this because they both played together in Passion UA for a period. Kavem is omega talented. I've loved watching this guy. When I watched him on Passion UA when it was the fully Ukrainian roster with Jakazmo, Topa, Demka. Funny enough. Um, I'm blanking. Who's the last? World 2K, and I forget who the last is. I'm blanking, but I loved him there. He was so good mechanically. I loved watching his demos. He has some insane, very good mechanical player, and he 100% should go get offers in this offseason, right? As a free agent. I haven't heard anything negative about the guy for the most part. I've even seen he's still playing Face It, still grinding Face It, right? Which is good. And I hope he goes to better rosters, right? I don't care where that ends up being. Hopefully, it's within the top of tier 2, tier 1.5 range, because I think he deserves it. He could even go to this EF roster, in my opinion, to replace Riggin, would be perfect. And on top of that, you could pick up SDY, who could also replace Demka, because SDY is also for a supportive, as your supportive piece. I think he's capable of being a tier 1 player again, right? I think SDY has that potential. Um, I don't think he ever lost that potential. I just think he's been forced to move to more star positions, especially within the ENCE roster, because of players who lack a lot of experience, right? And I don't think he's a star. I think he's a supportive piece. I think he's excellent at being a supportive piece. Um, He's a bit older now, right? He's like 29, which is actually surprising. I'm surprised he's actually that old. I thought he was younger, but I still have faith. Maybe they go to EF. Maybe they make EF better. Honestly, maybe it would. You get the Ukrainians back in, I guess. You remove one Ukrainian, you get two. So maybe it's a good move. We'll see. Mels and Jimfat part ways, and JL departs Navi. I mentioned JL and Jimfat in the same section, group, whatever you want to call it, because they both were on Mels, right? Mels and Jimfat. Jimfat could go to a lot of rosters, BC Game, Aurora. People are saying Navi for Emma. I don't buy it. I know Jimmy has played star positions when he was in Mouse NXT, but I think he really is designed to be an anchor. He seems like he's not very vocal. Um, so I think he's designed to be an anchor, and I would want to continue to see him in an anchor because he is, he was one of the best anchors of 2024, right? When it was second season, right? Second year. 2023, he played ESL Pro League and those things when they still had Frozen. Um, and they won that, and he was basically MVP. I think he was MVP. Not sure. Um, and then Jail departs Navi. Jail, I don't know. Jail is a bit of a weird player. I don't think he was bad on Mouse. I thought he was pretty decent. I think he didn't get to play all the roles he wanted. He was kind of a supportive piece who got to play some late rounds and some lurk. I think JL is a decent addition to most tier 1.5 rosters, right? I think he won't go below that because of the experience and because of some of the tenureship he has because of that 2024 year, right? That 2024 year, I think brought him a lot of respect as a player. I think he definitely has the capability to go to tier 1.5 teams again, maybe top at tier 2, um, and build himself up. I still haven't seen enough watching the Mouse stint, right? The Mouse stint was too brief, too short. I need more sample size to really comment on it. But I think in my opinion, Gel could go to better rosters. I don't know what he would be. He's kind of a weird player to judge because he's so like flexible in his roles. He's not really a rotator, but he's not an anchor. He doesn't lurk, but he doesn't, entry either. He's just weird. He's a weird player to discuss. And then finally, legacy target Thomasin. Thomasin from Bestia. Thomasin has been a highly touted prospect from Tier 2 South America for a while. He's Argentinian. Apparently, they're also targeting Tri. Those are both upgrades for the roster. Thomasin is incredible player, right? Whenever I've caught his games, whenever I've watched Bestia, right? I'm not even the biggest like Tier 2 South American watcher at all, right? I mostly focus on Europe. But whenever I've watched Thomasin, he's blown me away, right, in terms of like the capabilities and the potential he has as a player from this region, right? I think him going to a Brazilian squad is legacy. I think this makes this team possibly a top 10 team consistently throughout the rest of the year if they get Tri and Thomasin. It just depends on how the cultural fit mesh, and then like is there language problems? Art as a caller, does he continue to get better and better? Because he has been better this year as a caller. So it really depends. But that's it for the roster rumors. I feel like I rambled more in this one compared to the last one, but I'm curious to what you guys think. A lot of them were tier 1.5, tier 2 rosters, which some people have zero interest in that stuff, but I love talking about tier 2, tier 1.5. That's my bread and butter, right? XC Pro League is on. They're finally playing BO3s. They're still BO1s today, though. But they're finally playing BO3s. I will talk about that. I will probably glaze Nemesis because I've been talking about Texi and Sedame for a while. Also, Result, my beloved. But yeah, I will make a video talking about XC Pro League soon. All right, bye.